In addition, written summaries will be required for one or more of the books. We know there's at least one summary. The order in which the books are discussed is subject to the following conditions. No two books that are summarized are discussed in consecutive weeks, so this cannot. It's super sloppy. That cannot happen. If N is not summarized, then R and T are summarized. I feel like I should have done this on the other one. N is not summarized, then R is summarized, and T is summarized. And then we have ordering. N is discussed earlier than T, T is earlier than O. And then we have F is earlier than O, and O is earlier than K and R. So F is before O, and then O is before K and R. Does that all make sense? Yes?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So can anyone tell me what this would then tell us about O?
It has to go in fourth.
Yes. So O would have to be fourth, because three things have to be before it, and K and R have to be after it. So then we know that K and R are in these positions, but we're not sure what the order is, so we have them going back and forth. And then over here we know that N is before T, and then F has to be over here, but F can be bopping around inside those three. Does that all make sense? Did most everyone get this? Okay, cool. So then I heard 14. Okay, did 12 or 13? Anyone want to raise a hand for either of those? We felt good about 12 and 13. Okay, 14. So we know if O is summarized, which of the following cannot be true? So 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. O is summarized. And then I'll just throw this in. Okay, so if O is summarized, immediately I would put in that we know that K, well not that K, but that this spot cannot be summarized, right? And that this spot cannot be summarized because we can't have two summarized in a row. And yeah, that's all that we can really fill in at this present time. So then I'm going to go through my options. So, option 1, F is the first book discussed. I don't see why not, right? F could be here, N and T. We're not violating anything down here because R could be summarized or not summarized, so we're not restricting this yet, right? Everyone feel good about that? So not A. B, K is the sixth book discussed. That can definitely happen because those are flopping back and forth. C, F is summarized. So if F is summarized, we know that it can't be here because this has to be not summarized. So F has to be here or here. So if F is here or here, then that forces T here, right? So T has to be there. So then let's just put F here. Oh, we can do that. F there and N there. So then F is summarized. So if F is summarized and T is not summarized. Wait, did I do that right? Yeah. So then N has to be summarized because T is not summarized. So if F is not summarized, then T would have to be summarized. So then N would have to be summarized, and that can't happen because we can't have two summarized next to each other.
Huh.
Does that make sense? I'm getting some yeses and some perhaps no's.
How did you get F in first?
You could do it second, so if you wanted to look at it.
Or third?
No,
Oh,
we know.
because, yeah,
So
the OS.
we knew that T had to be here.
Okay. But you could put
But
F
you
in
could have
second.
put F second, and you would have come to the same conclusion. Because if F was there and N was there, and then F was summarized, then that would, T is still not summarized, so that would still force N to be summarized, which cannot happen.
I see.
Make sense? Everyone feels good about that one? Okay, cool. Does anyone want to go over 15?
Sure.
Yeah? Okay. 15. So if neither of the last two books discussed is summarized, which of the following could be true? 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have O, K, R. So the last two are not summarized, and then this stays the same up here. Make sense? Okay. So if R is not summarized, what does that tell us about N?
It is summarized.
Yes. Yes. So we know N has to be summarized. So I would just put that down here. But that's all that we know about this diagram so far. So then we can go through. So which of the following could be true? K could be summarized. That obviously can't be true because that was what the question was. So O is summarized. So if O is summarized, and we know N has to be summarized, are there any restrictions with that? Is there anything that would prevent that from being okay? Right, because we could have O being summarized, we could throw out N here, and then T and F, and we're good to go, right? So everyone gets why B is correct? Should we go through why the rest are incorrect? No. Did anyone pick anything else that they would want to go through? Any other answer? Why it's wrong? Okay, sounds good. And then 16. So substitution. Which of the following, if substituted for the condition that F is before O, and O is before K and R, so that last rule I think it was, yeah, would have the same effect in determining the plan for the literature course. So right off the start, you know that you're going to need an answer that not only is going to keep these two in these spaces, flipping back and forth, but also make sure that F is coming before O. So both of those conditions are going to have to be met in the answer. So let's go through the options. A, T is discussed third, and the last two books discussed are K and R, not necessarily in that order. So the second part seems good, right? The last two books, K and R, not necessarily in that order, so that's met, they're flip-flopping. But T has to be discussed third. Does T have to be discussed third? No, because it could be second, and N could be here, and F could be here. So that's too strong. It constrains T too much. So that's out. Does that make sense? Yeah? Cool. Okay, B. T is discussed earlier than F, and the last two books are K and R, not necessarily in that order. We already talked about that second part. So T is earlier than F. So does T have to be before F? Or could we have F and T? Right? Or N, F, T. So again, that's constraining T too much. And also that one doesn't really say much about O. So I don't know what I was doing there. Where's O? All right, so C, K, and R amongst the last three books discussed, and F is among the first three books discussed. So that says nothing about where O is. So that doesn't tell us that F is before O, or that K and R have to be after O. You could have K, O, R, which would violate that rule. So D, K and R are discussed in consecutive weeks, not necessarily in that order, and O is discussed fourth. So O is discussed fourth. That's great, because that puts O where we know O has to be, so that's helpful. And then we know that K and R are discussed in consecutive weeks. So this rule, N, T, O, is separate. We know that that still stands. So that means N and T have to come before O. So 2 of these spaces are being used by N and T. So the only place that K and R could go would be after O, flipping back and forth. So that rule is met. Does that make sense? Right? Because there's 3 spots, 2 are being occupied. They gotta be down here. So that's good. That's like check 1. So now we have to make sure that F is like forced before O. So if O is 4th, these 2 we know have to be here. Then that means F, the only option would be in the first 3 spots, putting it automatically before O. Does that make sense? Cool. And then for good measure, E, K, and R are discussed in consecutive weeks, not necessarily in that order, and F is discussed 3rd. It's problematic for a lot of reasons. F doesn't have to be 3rd, as we had already discussed. That's too constraining. It doesn't really tell us the relation to O and K and R and where O might be in all of this before or after. Like O could be down here and K and R could be there. So that's out. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Are there any questions on that one?
For substitution questions, what are the typical wrong type of answers? Like things that constrain the rules incorrectly, or something that does like nothing for it?
Mm-hmm. So, then I just went over this. So substitution rules, incorrect answers are things that are either too strong or too weak. So something that constrains a variable unnecessarily. So like all of those examples, like F
All the
has
F
to be
examples?
3rd.
Okay.
Or too weak, which would be like,
K and R back and forth.
yeah, but doesn't tell you anything about their relation to O.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Make sense? Sound good? Cool. Okay, yay, thank you.